So welcome everybody to, obviously our next live event here where we're going to be talking all about rookie mistakes. So, top mistakes that new grads might make when it comes to starting their careers or working for the first time. I'm here with Dr. Shane Foster. He owns Athens Eye Care, private practice in Athens, Ohio. You do a lot of different things, from research to industry to assistant professor. You also serve as an externship site for fourth year students, I believe, as well. So, let's maybe, well, before we jump in, I've got another Easter egg for those that have been following along and collecting them for the raffles. So if you're collecting these, and you should, because it gives you additional entries, the Easter egg or the secret code or the code, whatever you want to call it for this talk, is group. So GROUP. So use that to get additional entries. So let's jump into it. Shane, let's talk a little bit about when you graduated, because you and I, when we were setting this up, had talked a little bit about that. And you said, you graduated, I believe, back in 08 when, there were some crazy things happening around that time. And, although things going on right now, a little bit different, but kind of potentially similar in some circumstances. And you had mentioned to me that kind of shaped your career, so to speak. So why don't you talk a little bit about that first, and then we'll get into those kind of mistakes, those rookie mistakes.
Sure. Yeah, so I graduated in 2008 when the Great Recession was hitting. And I thought next to 9/11, this would be kind of the most impactful, one of the most impactful moments of my life. And of course, I was wrong on that because now we're living through COVID-19. So I figure a lot of the new grads are in the same situation that I might have been in 2008, which was, my classmates couldn't find jobs. We didn't know what we were going to do. And I was very fortunate that I had already had an established connection with the practice that I joined. So even though it wasn't probably the most financially sound decision for them to bring on a new grad at the time, they honored that contract and brought me on. But I was only working 3 days a week. So working 3 days a week, I was able to get by, but didn't get ahead. So it was a rough period of time. I didn't have a full schedule for a good year out of school.
Yeah, definitely. And I know there's been, and we've had different talks on the same subject, just about jobs and finances all throughout the day today and yesterday. And there is a lot of fear right now with those, particularly those fourth years who are like, man, I'm graduating. The market for jobs is not good right now. I've got a ton of student loans. What am I going to do? So, it sounds like in a way, some things kind of worked out. It sounds like you got started part-time maybe first, and it kind of eventually led into things. And, maybe there's some kind of rookie mistakes to take away from that, so to speak, as it relates to kind of looking for jobs for the very first time, because, a lot of people are saying, man, my dream job is to be in private practice, but no one's hiring right now. Should I consider alternate pathway? Should I consider working for maybe a bigger one of the corporations, that kind of thing? So any, advice on just kind of mistakes, maybe not necessarily just, mistakes in general, a lot of newer grads make when they just get their careers going.
Right. I mean, I think I made a big mistake in that I was only working 3 days a week. I was able to survive financially. I was able to start paying back my loans when that deferment period ended, but I should have been working somewhere else part-time, trying to make up additional dollars so that I could pay more toward my student loans, because I'm still paying on them 12 years later. And I've still got a long way to go. Obviously, it worked out okay for me in the end. I'm in a great position. I own the practice now. It's a great place to be in, but I could have been even further along had I taken the advice of my employers at the time. And when they said, it's okay to work somewhere else part-time, obviously I had a covenant in my contract not to compete with them, but I could have gone somewhere else to get some part-time work or do something like that, like in the evenings or on the weekends. So that'd be my advice, is to, look everywhere you can. Maybe your dream job is academia, and that's not a possibility right now. Or maybe your dream job is owning a practice, and now you need to work in a corporate setting part-time or something. But just keep working forward, making those steps forward. You never know when those doors are going to open.
Yeah, and the other thing that kind of was coming to my attention here that I was just thinking about, when I was introducing you as, you serve as a fourth year externship site. And, one thing that popped up was that a lot of these externship sites are closed, or, the fourth year, the last externship of fourth year is no longer happening, right? And, it kind of is interesting because that's kind of when you start to get your clinical sort of confidence, so to speak. So now you've had one less rotation, and it's already maybe difficult to kind of
Mhm.
get out in the real world, start practicing. So any advice for those that are watching that are kind of just getting started and they're like, man, I've got less experience now, less hands-on experience, I should say. Where do I find the confidence when I actually can start working?
Right. So yeah, you have less hands-on experience and you have less of that clinical wisdom that you get just by being in practice for many years, but you have more up-to-date education than any employer out there. So I've been out of school for 12 years. The curriculum now looks totally different than when I was there.
Mhm.
Doing injections, doing lasers, that kind of thing was not. Uh, we were starting to look at that a little bit, but didn't have an entire course on it like a lot of places do now. So
Yeah.
you have more up-to-date training and education than anybody who's going to employ you. So you just have to remember that, and that brings a lot of value.
Yeah, for sure. And when it comes to getting out and practicing, I guess there's some other rookie mistakes that are involved there, right? You're new, you know a lot, like you said, but inevitably practicing out in the real world can be scary sometimes. I mean, when it comes to actually start seeing patients, right? What are some of the biggest mistakes you see that maybe your students are making in their externships, or maybe in general that ODs might make when they start practicing on their own, just from experience?
Well, I think the biggest thing is the lack of confidence. You brought up confidence earlier, and that's a big portion of it. Patients don't know that you gave them the best refraction in the world. They don't know that you were able to see the endothelial cells of the cornea. They don't know that. They just need to understand that they're being well taken care of, and you're exuding that confidence that you're doing a good job. There are going to be things you don't know, and that's understandable. I don't feel like I mastered BIO until about 6 months out of school. I mean, honestly, it's one of those things that you're going to learn by doing. That's why they call it practice. You're continually practicing. So having confidence and knowing that you're doing the best you can and you're doing a great job, and knowing that it's okay to say I don't know, or it's okay to tell somebody you want a second opinion. Uh, I did that for the first several months or even years of my career. I would go down the hall and go to one of my employers and say, can you come take a look at this? I just want a second opinion. And patients value that. They understand that you're taking the next step and you're, making them a priority. You're saying, I'm not
Yeah.
so sure about this. I want someone else to take a look at it. And it's great when you're in a group practice and you can just go down the hall and do that.
Yeah.
And you don't have to send them across town.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I had that same experience when I got started. I was fortunate enough to be practicing with, another doc who was in the practice every day. So, when I had those instances, kind of like you said, where I just wasn't sure, I just, kind of tapped him on the shoulder. Hey, can you come look at this? And, patients never kind of looked at it in a bad way at all.
Right.
So, certainly using your colleagues or someone in the practice with you is definitely a good thing. And I think there's something to take away here just from in terms of, trying to find the right fit. But before we get into that, someone had asked here, maybe you could share some wisdom here is as recent fourth year grads, or graduating, if we haven't secured a job yet, do you think we should be reaching out to practices looking for something right now, or waiting? I mean, you have a practice, so what is your experience? What would you say as a practice owner?
There's never a bad time. I think that even if there's not a spot for you at that moment, if it's something you're interested in and it's a career path that you would really like to pursue, putting those feelers out there and making that connection at any time is a good time. So right now, if there were somebody that was coming to me and saying that they were interested in a position, right now, yeah, we probably don't have something at this moment, but who knows? I mean, if another associate decides to move away or has an issue where they need to cut back to part time because of childcare or something like that, there's always a possibility. And I think
Yeah.
that it's always good to reach out.
Yeah, for sure. great advice. And, on that same note, and, we've got just a couple minutes here, a minute or two kind of left before we have to wrap up. But, you do so many different things, and we kind of, this has been a theme throughout, this chat that we're having right now is, don't be afraid to do something, even if it's not your dream job. And I mean, you have a practice, you serve as an externship site, you do things in industry, you do, research, you've done research, that kind of thing. I mean, how do you go about finding, what is kind of, what career path should you take? And, what are some signs that something might not be the right fit for you? And what are signs that something might be the right fit for you?
Well, I think, first and foremost, I've tried to never say no to an opportunity if I can. Obviously, you can't overextend yourself, but if there's something that you have some interest in and you're able to do it, why not try it? That's the way I got into all of these different things, getting involved with the state association and with the AOA and with research. It was just because I said, sure, let's try. Um, I think when you're looking for a good match with an employer or with a practice situation, number one, you just have to have a similar philosophy, and you have to genuinely like the people you're working with. If you dread coming into contact with that person every day, it's not going to work in the long run. So no matter what situation it is, it can be the most lucrative or the most prestigious job, and if it's not what seems right for you, then it's never going to work out. You've got to know your own strengths and weaknesses, and how your employer or your practice situation can help supplement those.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to jump on with us today and just kind of share your words of wisdom. And you've been at this a good bit of time now, so we appreciate you kind of spending your time with us and sharing that information with everybody. And certainly a lot to take away from it. So before we head off, I think someone had mentioned, I was just reading a chat, and someone had mentioned the Easter egg. I believe I said group off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure I said group. So if I'm pretty sure that was the Easter egg for this talk. If not, we'll check at the next talk, because we've got plenty more coming. So, but thanks, Shane. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day. We'll
Great,
do this
thank
again
you.
soon, hopefully.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Mhm.